Good evening. My name is Jeff Smith. I'm Chair of the Webster Groves Plan Commission. We are a 9-member Board of Citizens appointed by the City Council to review development proposals and make recommendations to the City Council regarding future development of the city. In addition to the members of the Plan Commission participating in person, or do we have anyone online? Okay, we all here. We have a few other representatives of the city I would like to introduce. Councilmember Alexander. Pardon? Oh, sorry. Let's change that.
I haven't updated my script yet. Sorry.
Yeah, that didn't sound right, but yeah. Thanks. Sorry. City Attorney Peter Bruntrager, Planning Development Director Mara Perry, and Denise is okay. I would like to welcome you all to tonight's monthly meeting of the Commission and take this opportunity to explain how we operate. As indicated in our agenda, we will begin with the regular session of the meeting when we will hear new applications for rezoning or subdivisions. We will hear a staff report and the applicant will explain the proposal. We will then ask for comments from the public. At that time, anyone with an interest in the proposal may indicate to city staff they have a question or would like to express their opinion by clicking on the raise hand feature in Zoom. To make sure that we accurately record your name, we ask that you identify your full name and address at the beginning of your comment. When you make your comments, we ask that you be as concise as possible and do not repeat a point made by a previous speaker. We also ask that you limit your comments to 3 minutes. One person who is a spokesperson for an organization may have 6 minutes to comment. After all citizens have spoken, the applicant will be asked to respond to any questions that have been raised during the hearing. When we have finished reviewing our proposal, we will move on to the next application. Comments concerning items not on the agenda should be made during the public comment section of the agenda near the beginning of the meeting. When we've completed the regular portion of the agenda, we will go into executive session. At that time, the commission will discuss the proposal and may decide to vote on the application or to postpone the decision. You are welcome to remain and listen to the discussion, but there will be no additional opportunity for public comment at that time. Our recommendations are sent to the City Council. In most cases, the City Council will conduct a similar hearing and must enact an ordinance before the proposal is finally approved. If the Plan Commission takes a vote tonight, the City Council will likely take up this issue at its first meeting next month. If you want information regarding our vote or the progress of the application, you may contact staff at City Hall. I would ask that the secretary read the first item for tonight's regular meeting.
Approval of minutes from April 1st, 2024. A motion to approve.
I had a question, if I could, before we approve the minutes. With regards to A.M. Clark, and I apologize for being difficult. The way I read those minutes, that was under the ownership, and the ownership changed in 2020. And now the property's gonna change, the ownership of the property. The way I read that, I thought the ownership changed in 2020, and there's some confusion as to why the CUP was not applied for then. The property is now being purchased by the new owner of the business.
That's correct, because first they purchased and the operation of the business, but they didn't purchase the land in the building.
Okay.
And then after that, which is the reason why it came to light that they had not applied for and received a CUP.
So he
When-
purchased the business, but now he's purchasing the
Land and
land, and that's
building.
what triggered the CUP.
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so you're okay with the minutes? All right, any other comments? I do have a motion. I do believe I have a second. So all those in favor of approval signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Next item.
Public hearing. 24 PC 06, St. Louis Children's Hospital, KBC Mental Wellness Campus, 330 North 4 Avenue. An application by KBC Behavior Healthcare Missouri, Inc. and St. Louis Children's Hospital for a repeal of existing zoning of MEC Educational Campus District back to A3 10,000 square foot residence district, and 3 conditional use permits to allow hospital use and institution use and an existing cell tower located on a 23.3 acre tract of land at 330 North 4 Avenue.
Okay, first of all, do we have anybody here? We got a lot of people here today and thank you for taking part in the process. Do we have anyone that wants to comment on anything not on the agenda? We have one?
Yeah.
Not on the agenda? Okay, all right. Please go ahead, Mark. Thanks.
Okay, I'm going to start out this evening talking through this particular petition, which is 24 PC 06 SL St. Louis Children's Hospital KBC Mental Wellness Campus at 330 North Gore Avenue. Just as a reminder to all of you, you do have a staff report that has a lot of information. I'm going to try to go through the information, both for the public and for all of you. You will see at the end of both my report as well as the end of my presentation that the plan is not to close the public hearing tonight. It doesn't mean that we will definitely take public comment during this hearing, but there will still be an opportunity for people to have additional public comment at the next meeting in August. So I'm going to start first with the zoning of the property. You can see here in the map on the PowerPoint slide that the current campus is under the MEC, Major Educational Campus District zoning, with a campus master plan. It was the very first MEC zoning that we did prior to us completely redoing the section in the zoning code and establishing educational campus zoning. So they did go under an older part of the code. And then within the year to 2 years after that, we established the educational campus districts for the EC1 and the EC2. This one did have a campus master plan, which is in the code change, which allows people to kind of craft a campus master plan that asks for certain things, certain setbacks, certain requirements. And we can also, as the Planning Commission, establish very specific regulations around it. The surrounding zoning on both the east, south, and west, which is all in the city of Webster Groves, is zoned A3 10,000 square foot residence district. You can see the very pale, not colored in any yellow to the north. That is the city of Rock Hill. Their zoning is A residential. I'm going to go through the history probably pretty briefly because there's a lot of history to this particular piece of property. From 1975 through 2012, there were 7 conditional use permits and 1 rezoning. Each of those was working with the Edgewood Children's Center, which was the original people that operated the campus. In this, they did a lot of CUPs to get extra elements to their educational facility. And again, this was prior to the educational campus zoning, where we tried to stop having CUP after CUP after CUP, when a couple of the campuses in Webster Groves had, in one case, Webster University had 42 conditional use permits. This one had the 7. And so in creating their campus master plan, they were able to then go back to something that established everything and would allow them to build off of that approved plan. The one thing that's in here is the E zoning. There was a very small area around a cell tower that was rezoned in 1992 to establish a little area of E zoning to allow for a cell tower. That cell tower is there on the campus and has been operating as a cellular tower on the campus since 1992. In October of 2013, the city approved Ordinance 8811, which changed the zoning to that major educational campus district. And at that time, the campus master plan was approved. For those that don't remember this lovely process 10 years ago, but we worked with the city of Rock Hill and moved the boundary of the city of Webster Groves because there was a small portion of the campus that was in Rock Hill and the rest of it was in Webster. So we did work, and both cities worked together to make sure that the entire campus was under one municipality, making it again easier to kind of work with the community and then work with the owners of the property to establish a plan for how they would develop in the future. Previously, it had only been 18.9 acres, and the major educational campus zoning required a minimum of 20 acres at the time. So by establishing and pulling that acreage from Rock Hill, it was now able to qualify under the MEC zoning. A little bit of history on the campus master plan. In March of 2014, the first site development plan was approved. That met the requirements of the campus. The site development plan came before Plan Commission, but as long as it met everything within the campus master plan, it then was able to move forward for construction. There was a second site development plan that was approved in February of 2016, both of those following the campus master plan. So to clarify the analysis that we're going to review through this and get a better sense of what they are proposing to do. The request is to repeal the MEC zoning. The way the MEC zoning was established, it was established in such a way that should someone wish to repeal it, it would go back to the prior zoning that was under it before the MEC was established. That allowed that it is single-family residential, or was before. Most of our educational facilities are in single-family residential zoning, but it allowed that opportunity that should it go away, it would go back to the prior zoning. The prior zoning was essentially A3, 10,000 square foot residence district. When you bring a portion of a piece of land from another community, it usually establishes the adjacent zoning. So that would also mean that the A zoning coming over from Rock Hill also became A3. There is that small bit of industrial that was put around just the location of that cell tower. When that MEC gets repealed, the ordinance that established in 1992, the cell tower location, was not repealed at the time when we did the MEC zoning. It still was there underlying. Same with all the other educational campus districts. They had all of their CUPs, and if someone wanted to continue to operate under that CUP, they could. In this case, that E industrial zoning could go back, and the original ordinance governing that cell tower, which is how it's been governed since 1992, would remain then in place. The request is then, once it reverts back to the A3 10,000 square foot residence district, is to obtain conditional use permits for two different uses. One use would be for an institution, which is how some of the educational facilities used to fall under as an institution within a single family residential zoning. The other CUP is to ask for a hospital use. Both of those allow you to establish a set of restrictions and regulations around that conditional use permit. And these two would operate, although they would operate together, they would also be separate ordinances in case in one instance or another, either of them needs to be amended. It would focus on that particular use and not on the campus overall. Yes.
I'm sorry, when I read all that, and I appreciate the explanation, but I guess I still have a question. Is it that the MEC would not allow a hospital, that you need to change the zoning?
That is correct. The MEC does not allow a hospital use. The MEC is specific for educational campuses. So when we established the educational campuses, we did not include everything in the zoning code as possible uses. We very specifically created a list of things that would naturally come on an educational campus.
And if I'm getting ahead, that's fine. You can shush me. But I gather there's already 16 beds of some sort at this.
I'll continue through the zoning and I'll talk you through why we're going to do what we're doing. This is the establishment, and I'll walk you through the zoning as to why they need to go through this path if that is the direction that they would like to build on this particular piece of property. We do always have to review the comprehensive plan when looking at what we're going to do on a particular piece of property. As a reminder, I know you all know we are currently going through an update to our comprehensive plan. However, with this application coming in at this time, we need to look at whatever our current plan is today. Our current plan today is our 2017 comprehensive plan map amendment. That map amendment identified our major educational campuses under the public, institutional, and community use for the particular piece of property. It is staff's opinion that it would be in compliance if it goes back to the single family residential zoning, and that the conditional use permits would go in place as institutions. As a reminder, when we are reviewing conditional use permits, we need to look very clearly at the factors that you're going to be reviewing when you get to the point where you are voting on this particular set of petitions. The conditional use permit shall determine whether the proposed uses will not substantially increase traffic hazards or congestion, substantially increase fire hazards, adversely affect the character of the neighborhood, adversely affect the general welfare of the community, or overtax public utilities. So I'm going to go through some different elements of the plan and what is being proposed, and then try to help clarify, because I know I've gotten a number of phone calls with questions regarding different elements of the plan. Sometimes people don't completely understand when reviewing plans. And so hopefully I'm going to try to simplify it down to the key elements. So uses for the institution portion of this site remain as they've been operating under the conditional, the campus master plan. So the educational facility special needs, which falls in under an institution, has a series of buildings that are existing. The proposal includes removing 3 of those existing buildings, and that was a part of the campus master plan already. It was previously approved under the campus master plan. Just to cover all of our bases, we took all 3 buildings before the Historic Preservation Commission last month in order to verify that there were no concerns with the removal of those buildings, even though they had previously been approved under the campus master plan. The new use that's being requested is for the hospital building. I've identified the hospital building in a blue color, and then the rest of the campus building-wise remains essentially the same. There will be some interior renovations and some other things happening, but the overall footprints of most of the other buildings essentially will remain the same. When we look at zoning uses, we look at a number of different factors. In this case, we look at enrollment, faculty, and staff projections, because the previous campus master plan, as well as the conditional use permit, will be impacted by the different factors of how large or what the intensity of this use can be. So the intensity of use sometimes is factored in by square footage. Sometimes it's by number of employees. Sometimes it's by the number of physical students or beds in this instance too. I went ahead and did a brief chart that identifies under the campus master plan and under their ordinance what they were approved for. They were approved to have up to 240 students. Those were daytime students that came to different elements of what had been Great Circle. And then they were allowed up to 72 beds. Those beds were for overnight for students that had been on the campus, but that needed more overall intake of help. And they were there for longer periods of time. It was not a hospital in any way. It was more of, again, an institution, a school, and we had it under educational campus special needs. The proposal at this point is to still continue to have the school under KVC. Their total number of students per their write-up would be up to 130 students. They do say that right now they have about 80 students. In addition, they are talking about having daytime patients that would not be part of that school population. And those daytime patients have 2 different elements to them, 24 in one type of use, and then 24 in another. There are different types of services that would be provided, and they have them sort of separated into 2 groups of 24, so for a total of 48 daytime patients. In addition, there's a request for the hospital beds. There's a request for a total of 77 hospital beds. 12 of them are of a more acute nature, and then the remainder of them are under the facility or the hospital that is being requested. This hospital does not have an emergency room. It does not have, and it is intended for youth and not for adults. I'm going to jump to another set of regulations that we look at in terms of intensity of use on the campus. The campus master plan had requested a certain set of zoning setbacks. You can see in the first column, the campus master plan had a set of setbacks from Rock Hill Road, North Gore Avenue, and Home Avenue. And then there were also southern, northern, and eastern property lines because of the unusual nature of the shape of the property. I went ahead and put these various types of setbacks and setback requests that we have had in the past and that we have now all together so that you could get a better sense of how is this going to change if it goes back to the original zoning and asks for a conditional use permit. The campus master plan had some pretty large setbacks from both Rock Hill and North Gore Avenue. It had some smaller setbacks from Home and the southern, northern, and eastern property lines. The Home Avenue was established based on a building that was already there. And then most of the other requests were based on, they had a plan to remove those 3 buildings and then to build some additional new buildings on their campus. The CUP setback, which is based on institutions and hospitals, those setbacks are based on the heights of the buildings. So based on the proposed or existing heights of all those buildings, I went ahead and did a column of what those setbacks would be required to be if you just went under the base regulations of it's 2 feet for every 1 foot of building height. So every setback is based on how large that building is. So as you can see, that would make some of the setbacks from Rock Hill Road and North Gore Avenue quite small, and then make a few of the other setbacks a little bit larger. I then in blue and on the site plan have established a blue line, which is a pretty close approximation of where the proposed setbacks are, and then highlighted in blue the proposed setbacks that they have on the property. So it makes a slightly smaller setback along Rock Hill Road. It maintains the same CMP setback on North Gore Avenue. It maintains the same one on Home Avenue, and then it maintains the same ones on the campus master plan. As we were doing our staff review of this and looking at the CUP setback, we really did feel like it would make a lot of sense to go with the CUP setback for the southern, northern, and eastern property lines because that would give just a little bit more buffer from neighboring residential. And if you see, the preliminary plan right now shows the buildings at 210, 165, and 265 feet away. So staff felt like that move from a 40-foot setback that was in the campus master plan to a 70 hopefully would be something that could be done and then would establish a little bit more buffer potentially. It doesn't mean that parking can't go through there. This is for building setbacks and keeping the buildings. I know we've gotten a lot of information so far. Any questions so far before I keep going through the development regulations?
You mentioned there were kind of 2 levels of patients, one of which was more acute. Maybe I could kind of speak to that.
Yeah.
Just so I'm clear, the preliminary plan column here, that is from their sheet. So they are requesting 60 feet from Rock Hill, but what they have right now is actually.
That is correct. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, we talked about the daytime use for the 77 hospital beds. I assume that means that there's going to be 24/7 staffing for the inpatient facility, correct?
That is correct. That is correct. They have put, and you'll see when I go into the parking, there's an overall, we were running the numbers based on, in some cases, based on also employees on a maximum shift. So they have multiple shifts in the 24-hour day. And so they have in their report and their letter, the approximate number of overall staff total, and then the maximum on a maximum shift that would be there at any time.
I have a question. So what you're kind of proposing is in terms of the setbacks, currently you have 100 feet along Rock Hill Road and you're leaning toward the 60 feet. And the current plan has 40 feet but the CUP requirements are 70 feet and you're leaning toward the 70 feet.
That is correct.
Okay.
That is correct. Because the CUP setbacks, I sort of went a little bit on those 3 southern, northern, and eastern property lines towards the CUP setbacks. The other requested setbacks are still above the CUP setbacks. and would meet both the CUP regulations, but also give additional, you're allowed to give or require additional setbacks beyond what are in the code.
And so the CUP requires on Long Rock Hill Road, and I was on council when we did the 100-foot. So I remember that discussion of why it was 100 feet. But with the addition of the new building and the CUP setback that's required, the 60 is kind of a halfway and takes into account the new building.
Correct. Correct. The new building is shown at 127 feet.
But it could go down to 60.
It could go down to 60. So that is a conversation that you can definitely have on whether you feel like you want to go even more beyond the CUP setback, which would be established based on the height of the building, which is 50 feet. Any other questions? Yep.
I didn't see on any of the plats. On these plats, I don't believe I saw, and it was hard to zoom in on my computer, any easements. If they showed easements, so I was just curious. If we know if there are significant easements and how they may overlap with the setbacks and to our charge to make sure we don't overtax public utilities.
Mhm.
Would seem on a side of size, it'd be nice to know if there's any public utilities that are going to need to be addressed.
So if I remember correctly, and I apologize, I did not put that layer on, all of the utilities are in the right of way. There is not any significant easements that go through or around the backs. I know there are lots of, subdivisions that get established, but this property's been in use for so many years that there were none that I saw. We can verify that before the next meeting. But all of the utilities that I know are on our GIS map were in the right of way. Okay, I'm going to keep going. Just as a reminder for those that are on Zoom, you will be able to speak at the end of the, later in the meeting when we do have public comment. So dimensional regulations related to height. The A3 zoning has dimensional regulations related to the number of stories and to the height. Hospitals and institutions have a much greater standard, which allow you to go up to 60 feet. The standard underlying residential allows you to go to 2.5 stories or 35 feet. You can see here in the chart that the only structure that goes over the 2.5 stories or 35 feet under the A3 single-family residential zoning is the Rock House, which of course is a historic structure in the center of the campus. It is 2.5 stories, but it is 40 feet tall. So one of the things that staff would recommend is that you could potentially put a height restriction in here, should you wish to do that. They are proposing that everything is staying essentially at either a 1 or there is in the existing 2-story structure, but all of them are under that. And it would help keep the overall, again, intensity of use down because the code does allow them to go up to 60 feet. This plan will go before the Metropolitan Sewer District to review both existing and proposed stormwater on the site. So we normally would only put in special restrictions if we felt that there was something extra that needed to be done. But this plan will go through MSD review to address the stormwater and the detention areas that they are proposing. Some of them had been proposed in the past campus master plan and had not been constructed yet because other parts of the plan had not yet been constructed. The parking analysis, you can see in purple highlighted all the existing parking lots that are on the campus. And we base the parking, this is one of the we established back in 2019, we actually established our own parking regulations. Whereas before, back in 2013, 2014, when the campus master plan went through, we were using county's regulations. So in this case, we went back through and established based on square footage or numbers of beds, based on our code, how many parking spaces would be required on the site. The total required number of spaces is 319. Again, the campus master plan was based on county regulations. We did try to work our codes a little bit better to work with the uses that we have within the community. So this, I think, gets a little closer to what would be required in the uses. Currently, the site has a total of 335 parking spaces. And the proposal, which I'm going to highlight here, is to reconfigure some of the existing parking. So there are some spaces that you can see where either like an entrance or a roadway is being within the campus is going to be reconfigured. Some additional parking is going to be moved in order to establish parking in relationship to the overall circulation around the campus. And then additional handicapped accessible spots are being added a little bit closer to some of the main entrances. So you can see here, they had 335 parking spaces. After reconfiguration, they will have 346 parking spaces. So not a huge change from the existing to the proposed. And the required parking is 319 parking spaces. Access and circulation regulations. The intensity of the development under the campus master plan was approved under a traffic impact study. There is a draft of the traffic impact study that will be given to the commission prior to the next meeting. But just as a reminder, the campus master plan prior to this had approved a new entrance at the very northern end of Rock Hill so that it would align with Bismarck. That was to give a much better entrance, ingress, egress out of the campus. Currently, the entrance that is off of Rock Hill is sort of at a peak in the road. It makes sight distance not super great as you're driving along Rock Hill going northbound as you come up over and hit the entrance. And in this overall, it was also intended to help with the circulation on the campus so that you could get in and out through the upper portions of the campus. You could come in on Home and you'd be able to go around to the various parking lots that you'd seen in the last slide. So that traffic impact study will be updated and that traffic impact study will be provided to you prior to the next meeting. Tree preservation and landscape. All the plans will be reviewed under the tree preservation and landscape ordinance. At this level, what we usually do is we try to see overall, conceptually, are they going to be able to meet the ordinance? Yvonne Steingrubby with the Parks Department has already done a review. She got into the very nitty-gritty details at this point, which we will pass on to the applicants. But overall, the concept is able to meet the requirements that are needed in the code in terms of new landscaping, protection of trees, and all of those plans would be reviewed when we get to the site development plan level. Normally, we only put things into the ordinance if it's going to be something above and beyond the code. If they can't save certain trees because they have parking requirements or something like that. This is a very large campus that is going to meet the regulations of the tree preservation ordinance. The new structure will go before the Architectural Review Board. You had in your packet some preliminary elevations. This would be able to then go to the Architectural Review Board at a key point in time in relationship to the timing of this overall process. Before I get into, so I had started this all out at the beginning that we are opening this hearing so that you can start asking questions so that the petitioner can hear any questions of additional information that they need so that the public can hear what the proposal is and start to ask some additional questions. You will note in your packets, you had one letter of support. I also had put on the dais an email from someone who was unable to attend. There were some questions in there that I forwarded some answers to. I'm sure that members of the public will probably also have some additional questions. Before we get to the point where we make the presentation, or they are able to make their presentation, I wanted to first ask if there were any questions. And then I also had put in the staff report some very, very preliminary regulations that you might put in your conditional use permits. So first, any questions about the rest of the review of the zoning?
For the traffic impact study, is that just for on the campus or is that the surrounding area as well?
campus and surrounding areas. So they will look at the level of service of traffic on the various roadways, and then the impact of this use versus what was approved for the campus master plan. One of the key important factors that has made a change to the traffic impact study is the fact that Steger, which became Givens, is now a local elementary school versus being a sixth grade center that brings children in from all over. So that will have an impact on Rock Hill Road and those numbers. And then just in general, looking at all of the traffic of those roadways that are impacted by this particular piece of property.
And Mara, would the traffic impact study also include if we needed to put like a stop sign, a four-way stop at Bismarck?
They will review all of that, correct?
Last question. I didn't see it in here. Will we see the proposed shift changes since there's a 24-hour period of use for the facility?
We can ask for some additional information. They did talk about how many, but no, we didn't have like specific numbers of the change will be at this hour and this hour. You'll see that there were also some requests. The police department had some questions about the overall security system, asked some questions about the facility and how there are some outdoor areas that are uncovered that will have fencing of non-climbable fencing of some kind. There are also some internal courtyards. And I didn't get into the super detail of the floor plans in this because in the overall, we need to first be looking at the bigger picture and then would be able to delve into a little deeper into the floor plans potentially at the August meeting if needed. Yes, so CBB did do the original traffic study and they will be the ones doing the update. No, that is on behalf of the petitioner. It will involve looking at what they believe their recommendations would be for the intensity of use and the level of surface of traffic. The applicants can give us a little bit more on that, but we knew that was going to be coming a little bit later. So our focus was, not on reviewing that at this time. Okay. I broke these out into two separate ones, but they're very similar to one another. So should the Planning Commission recommend approval of the institution CUP? And as a reminder to the public, this is a recommendation to the City Council. And then there will be another hearing at the City Council who will then vote on the regulations. We always put in here that all provisions of the city code shall apply except as expressly modified in the CUP. So tree regulations, lighting regulations, there's quite a few, all of our various building codes, we don't repeat them. We basically just put things that are above and beyond. If there's something we're really concerned about, I know I did one of the questions from someone of the public had asked some questions about lighting and some concerns about lighting. If we feel that it's important that we need to bump that up and put it into the ordinance, we can potentially put it into the ordinance. The light regulations do talk about light trespass at property lines. And until we get a complaint, we don't go out and use our light meter to determine if there's an issue. And we usually do get a light study, but because many times there's existing light fixtures, and when someone changes over to LED, a lot of times that light level can change. So that might be something that things that we might need to look at. The next thing would be a list of permitted and accessory uses. So that CUP really narrows down what they can have in terms of that institution. So an institution as educational facilities, special needs. Also accessory to that would be offices, a gymnasium, parks, and playgrounds, which should cover all of the uses that the institution part of this would need. The setbacks, again, there could be other additional setback restrictions if you so want to discuss them, but I initially drafted them as 60-foot front yard setback from North Rock Hill Road, 200 front yard setback from North Gore Avenue, 30-foot front yard setback from Home Avenue, and 70-foot setbacks from all other property lines. Daytime population not to exceed 130 students, 24 partial hospitalization program individuals, and 24 intensive outpatient program individuals. Property shall maintain a minimum of 319 parking spaces based on the preliminary plan. Should additional square footage be added in the future, all parking regulations will be met per the city code. So they could add some additional square footage, meeting all of the setbacks. And because they have an excess of parking, they might not need to come back with any additional parking. But should they exceed that number with the new square footage and need to put in more, it would be a site development plan that would come back before the Plan Commission. Applicants shall demonstrate compliance with all MSD requirements prior to construction and shall construct all stormwater improvements in accordance with MSD requirements then in force. Knox boxes will be required on all new and renovated buildings for emergency access. Fixed fire protection requirements may require additional water lines and fire hydrants. There is a proposed new hydrant on the plan. And the plan needs to incorporate perimeter access to the property for emergency vehicles. Our preliminary review does show that it does provide that, but we do always want to make sure that that's in the ordinance for any issues as the plan continues to evolve. Before I go on to the hospital one, any questions?
I noticed you had in the application, the materials, the two, one for the institution, one for the hospital. So the boat, did the two CUPs apply to one property?
Yes, they do. 2 CUPs can apply to a single piece of property. Okay. So the next one is very, very, very similar because it has a lot of the same things on the same piece of property. So all provisions of the city code shall apply. The use will be an inpatient hospital, and then offices, gymnasium, parks, and playgrounds would also be included. The setbacks would remain the same. A maximum of 65 licensed inpatient health beds and 12 psychiatric residential treatment facility beds for that total of 77 beds. The rest of the regulations would remain the same in terms of parking, MSD, and fire protection. Any questions about the hospital CUP?
I have a question just about kind of administration. So you have 2 CUPs all under the same petition. So if one CUP were to, like, say, just go away, how does that work? Why aren't there 2 petition numbers for each CUP? I guess is my question.
So we looked at some of the options of making them 2 separate petitions. Initially, it was the thought that maybe we'd put it all under one ordinance. And as the review was going forward, it made more sense to separate them into 2 individual CUPs. We didn't go back and re-advertise as multiple CUP in multiple petitions, but they can go forward on their own. And should we need to have one move forward at some point, but it made it easier to have 2 separate ordinances for the 2 CUPs in order for it to, again, if there are certain changes that need to be made to KVC versus the hospital use that's partnering with St. Louis Children's Hospital, it'd be better to have those 2 ordinances separated from one another.
So there will be 2 separate ordinances.
Staff is recommending 2 separate ordinances, one for each CUP, and then we will probably need a separate ordinance to repeal the zoning. So there'll be a separate ordinance that will repeal the zoning and then the 2 CUPs. So technically 3 ordinances overall, keeping it as clean as possible.
Gotcha.
So staff is requesting for the hearing to be held open to the August 5th, 2024 meeting, which would be the next Plan Commission meeting. But what we will do now is allow the petitioner to make their presentation. We're going to start with, they had requested, they have a short 5-minute video to share. So we're going to share that video first, and then they will come up to make their presentation. And then for the public who wants to speak, after their presentation is done and after the Plan Commission has asked their questions, we will open it up to anyone from the public who would like to speak or ask questions. And so I'm going to move on just momentarily.
A mental health crisis.
Anxiety among our kids is at an all-time high.
Record levels of depression, violence, and suicide. About half of American kids with mental health issues do not get treatment.
An increasing amount of families are turning to local emergency departments for help for a child experiencing a mental health crisis.
Suicide was a second leading cause of death among young children and teens.
This is an urgent scenario right now.
We're seeing students who are struggling with their mental health, struggling to navigate social interactions, struggling to cope with situations. And as a result, that anxiety and depression is increasing for students.
At first, I thought it was just growing pains, but I soon realized it was much more.
I found a bag of pills and a suicide note hidden. This wasn't a depressive episode. This was life or death.
Suicide is the second leading cause of death between kids 10 and young adults age 24. But it's really the young adolescents, 10 to 14, that really have the highest risk among that group. It's led to the Surgeon General describing this as an emergency for the United States and for the American Academy of Pediatrics and the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry to both come out and say this is a national crisis that we all have to tackle.
St. Louis Children's Hospital has been a part of our community, serving the needs of our kids for over a century, and is recognized as one of the best children's hospitals in the country. But even with the best of care, the demand is too large.
It is really disheartening for all of us that treat children in St. Louis Children's Hospital with psychiatric disorders when we can't take care of them ourselves. We see them in the emergency room, we diagnose them, we know what they need, we spend time talking to their families, but then we have to send them somewhere else because our beds are full.
We had to take her to the hospital 3 times, and each time it was no less than a 17-hour wait for a bed.
We waited 3 days in the ER.
Last week, we had 16 children waiting in the emergency department to be seen at one time. And that's because we've had a significant decrease in the number of inpatient beds in the St. Louis community, at the same time that we've had this astronomical rise in mental health symptoms among youth and adolescents.
If I had to leave my child anywhere, it was going to be at Children's Hospital.
I knew she needed help we couldn't give her.
KVC Missouri, a leading provider of children's mental health and child welfare services, and Children's Hospital, are partnering to provide St. Louis and Webster Groves a place of expert care for children's mental health. Giving the care that is desperately needed, with a safe and secure hospital with only one focus: to help children and families in their time of crisis.
The benefit of being able to get quick, expert care for your child in your community is so rare and so needed. We hope that with a new facility, we will be able to provide care to all of the families that need it. Having access to more resources in the community would mean more time with students in the moment at school, and knowing that that's going to translate into care and support and services for that child would be a benefit for me as a provider, giving me that confidence that the student's going to get the help that they need, but also relief for the family.
This campus is more than just a building. It's a place of hope for more than 4,000 youth per year. A children's mental health hospital dedicated to serving the mental health needs of children and their families. With this new facility, care can be near, lives could be saved, and families have a path forward.
I would be thrilled to have that kind of facility close by. And actually, I do live very close by. To have that continuum of intensive outpatient services and partial hospitalization services and several units for inpatient services is really the dream, to make sure that we're caring for the entire continuum along all of the ages and meeting the needs of the entire community.
What's the representation from the applicant? Thanks, Mike. So, I mean, you're welcome to come up in any order, but I have Angela Martin Davis Das first.
I'm going to go ahead and start
That's fine.
on behalf of the group. I'm Trish Lalo. I have the privilege to serve as president of St. Louis Children's Hospital. I must say it's very tough to speak after watching that video, and I do want to extend gratitude to the Webster Groves residents who were kind enough to offer their support and be involved in the making of that video. As you've heard, St. Louis Children's Hospital has been in St. Louis almost as long as this campus has been in Webster. And with me this evening is Lindsay Stevenson, president of KVC Missouri. KVC Missouri is relatively new to town. However, they have been helping kids with mental health needs for decades across the country. So some of the questions before the commission center on how this project fits within the neighborhood and general welfare of the community. For that, we lean heavily on both the past and the future. There have been kids receiving overnight care on campus for as long as there's been a Webster Groves, first as a boarding school, then for many generations as an orphanage, and for roughly the last generation, the campus served as a home for kids receiving what we would now call residential care. Children on this campus have been a part of the community for as long as there has been a community. And we firmly believe that this new facility with the structure of a hospital will improve the welfare of the community through thoughtful, evidence-based modern design of the facility with more sophisticated access control and, importantly, more comprehensive mental health care for kids, which you heard in the video includes our kids here in Webster. The campus has for many years operated with up to 68 kids staying overnight on the grounds, and this project seeks to serve, as you heard from Mara, a similar number of children, but will serve them in a state-of-the-art healthcare facility and with comprehensive multidisciplinary care and oversight 24 hours a day. Now, we know traffic is always a concern. We've heard it come up already, and we will be back in August with the final results of our traffic study. But both preliminary results and our experience running hospitals tell us there will be no perceptible impact on the campus compared to when it housed residential treatment programs with a similar number of kids and staff. And to the earlier question, we know the majority of our team members change shifts outside of the typical 8 to 5 business day. Those are typically 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., but we're happy to come back with a more specific answer to that question at the next meeting. On the topic of traffic, let me introduce Michael Goslinga to answer any early questions you might have. Michael?
Hi, good evening. Michael Gosling. I'm with Hafer Walker Architecture, with an architecture firm on the project. And just as much as anything, I can confirm the points that have been made so far. CBB is doing the traffic study. They are in the process of finalizing that now. Based on their initial report so far, they do not see any significant impact to traffic hazard or congestion. And to the points that have been made, they will be making a recommendation to provide the safe roadway.
Can I ask a question? What was the duration of the study and what time of year?
So they did the study, I believe, in March of this year. So it's very recent that they did actual traffic counts. That's when they went out and did the traffic count.
And do you know what days of the week or how many days it ran?
I can double check that. I know it was for at least one full day, but I can double check the time frame on that.
Yeah, I'm primarily asking because of the schools referenced. So,
Yeah,
I
right.
just want to make sure
We
that
did
we've got a
discuss that
snapshot
today, and so
based on that.
they thought that since they have to have current data as that starting point, that it would account for that.
Thank you.
We read in Mara's summary that the police have a few questions regarding safety and security. And we've heard from the commission now a question about the different types of patients that we will care for on this campus. Now let me introduce Kim O'Connor Soul to help answer those questions.
Good evening, and thank you for having us. My name is Kim O'Connor-Soul. I'm the Senior Inpatient Officer for KBC Health Systems. And I wanted to speak to the members today and the community about how important we take our job in ensuring safety of the patients that we care for, the staff that provide the care and treatment, as well as our community and residents. To start, we train every single employee that works in the building that's there 24/7. 365 days a year in crisis de-escalation, so that in the event of any kind of emergency, our staff are fully trained and prepared. But we also have a team of staff that we call safety and security representatives that are on every shift, every day of the week, and are in the building when crisis rises. Our spaces are also done in very secure environments, so the facility is locked and secured, and all of our outdoor spaces are as well. So you need a staff member's badge. In essence, only staff can get outside of the facilities. And our courtyards that you see, we know that it's critical for children's mental health, for people's mental health, to have time outdoor in spaces and to play and to engage in their environment. But we want to make sure that happens in a really safe and secure way. So we have 12-foot behavioral health grade anti-climbing walls in the exterior courtyards, surrounded by landscape so that it's visually appealing, but also equally safe. And on this campus, we have 160 cameras throughout the interior and exterior of our facilities that will be manned and maintained by those security that I had spoken to. Also, we were talking about, fielded a question, I believe, around the populations of people that we care and treat for. So there's a 65-bed unit that treats all of the children that we will serve are children dealing with some behavioral health or mental health issues, specifically typically depression, anxiety, suicidal ideation, et cetera, or post-suicide attempt. The 65-bed inpatient facility does that in a short-term stay with our goal to give you the support and care that you need, but get you back to your communities and your school and your loved ones. The residential program that we spoke about is that other 12 beds. That population is meant to be a little bit longer term for our chronic patients who have a little bit more significant issue. And then the partial hospitalization program and the intensive outpatient are meant as transition levels of care. As you heard in the video, we want to make sure that if a child comes to us in crisis, they never have to come back. And so these are step down measures. The partial hospitalization program runs during the day, 5 days a week. 5 hours-ish typically a day, so that all of their clinical needs and educational needs are met. And then the intensive outpatient is for students who've transferred successfully back to school, but who need more than 1 hour a week of individual therapy, and they will get group and outpatient therapy, traditionally 3 days a week, 3 hours each day. So that is an overview of the populations we'll serve and the security features in the building.
Thank you, Kim. So in summary, this project will provide a better, more secure facility in a footprint no larger than the old buildings it will replace. It will continue a long tradition of caring for children, and this will be a more secure fit for the neighborhood. As the president of Children's Hospital, I can attest this is absolutely needed. And also as a proud Webster mom myself, who together with my husband are raising our youngest son here in Webster Groves, let me double down on that need. Our kids all play with each other, go to school with each other, go to church with each other, and any child and any family anywhere can find themselves in need of this care. This will be the best place and the best way to deliver such care. Thank you, and we're happy to take questions.
Yeah, I just have one question.
Please.
You saw the list of permitted and accessory uses that the staff has outlined. Is there any other uses that you anticipate or you see that weren't included in this list? Like, I don't know, does hospital cover clinic? Like, like you said, it sounds like there's day, like the drop off and things like that.
Thank you for that question. So the intent here is to only provide the services that have been outlined in this application. So I think I understand where you're going.
I just
So
want to make sure
doctor's
that
office visits or, lab draws or anything. No.
Yeah. I just want to make sure
Yes.
that you're happy with what's, been outlined here.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm reading about the staff to patient ratios. That's not the right term because I was trying to look at it overall.
Yes.
And I know there's a lot of different services being offered here, but I feel like I'm looking at it wrong. I'm tracking almost 1-to-1. Is that correct?
I'm going to let Kim answer that for us.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we have a varying amount of staff holding different roles and responsibilities. And so the direct care staff who are with the children, there's never more than a 4-to-1 patient ratio on waking hours. On the evening hours, we do no more than 6-to-1. But that does not include the nurses, the doctors, the therapists, and all of the other ancillary services and supports. So on any given day, you will have more staff in the building than children, but assigned to patients, those are our typical ratios. They only go up. That's sort of giving you the lowest level of care that we wanted to make sure you guys were aware of, but we do staff up from there.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yes.
I've, sorry, losing my voice. Whoa. I work for CHADS. I don't know why. Weird. CHADS Coalition. So, communities helping adolescent depression and suicide. It's just so weird. So I want to know, are kids coming here instead of going to Children's Hospital in crisis? Let's say I have 2 boys. Let's say he's having suicidal ideation. We know to come here to the Webster Groves location instead of downtown.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that question. I'm happy to answer it and then you tell me. Just, so the intent here is to accept same day walk-ins.
Okay.
And so what you would experience is not having to go to an emergency room.
Yes.
But bringing your child to this campus, being evaluated by a pediatrician and then a psychiatrist for same day admission. So that is the goal, is to try and reduce the number of kids who are sitting in emergency rooms waiting for placement.
Okay, that's what it seems like. That's wonderful. And then what is the age range?
The age ranges that we are envisioning are 6 to 17 years old.
Okay. Okay, because 18 is when they become adults, so they, okay. Thank you.
You mentioned there's been a history here at this site, a facility of providing care for kids, for forever, I guess. So I was just a little, I didn't see it and I'm not familiar with the topic really. Is it really much of a change from a kid that would have been in there, a young person needing help, 5, 6 years ago to today? What's really just changing as far, because it seems like it's not a big change to me.
So I appreciate your question, and I would argue that it is an entirely material change in the type of child that we are caring for. So the 65 beds, the acute inpatient psychiatric hospital for children, will be treating children who have primarily diagnoses of suicidal ideation, depression, anxiety. My understanding, prior owners of the property were using it in a completely residential fashion, so not in a therapeutic way per se. And Kim's going to interrupt me.
No, I'm going to stand with you.
She doesn't want the president answering any questions. I get this.
Stand with you. So on the previous campus, it was a residential, but done in a different building. Because this would be a hospital building, it's in a secured environment. So the doors are locked. It's an I-2 occupancy. That allows us to create a level of safety and security that wasn't previously permitted when you're only doing a residential. So the population are children struggling with mental health. They are children struggling with anxiety, depression, suicidal ideation, et cetera, getting life-saving care and treatment, but doing it in a much more secure environment, with an environment that's already been adapted. And then just to share, KBC has the privilege of doing this type of service in other locations around the country. And we've had 1 emergency call in our 3 facilities in the last year, and we treated 4,800 children. So the volume of some past history of our predecessors that owned that campus, which was prior to our involvement here, it will look very different. But we hope you don't know that. It shouldn't impact the community in any way, in that way of meeting folks at times that are unnecessary.
I had a question about just kind of the partnership.
Mhm.
So I'm familiar with WashU Med School and BJC and Children's and that part of partnership. How is that similar to the partnership between Children's and KBC? And will WashU faculty, like who are the
Yes.
practitioners, I guess?
Yes, thank you for asking. So KVC and St. Louis Children's Hospital have entered into a joint venture to provide this care together. Washington University is a key part of the care provider model. So you saw Dr. Cynthia Rogers on the screen. She is the chief of child psychiatry for St. Louis Children's Hospital. WashU faculty will be providing care in this facility.
Thank you.
Anything else? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So we'll take some questions and comments from the public, and as applicable, the applicant may address those questions. So the first speaker I have is Christopher Hickey. And I got your address here. Go ahead and say it.
Yes, good evening. I'm a Webster Groves resident. I live on Turf Court. I'm speaking on behalf of my support of this project. I am the father of an 18-year-old son who is recently diagnosed as schizophrenic. We adopted him out of the Missouri foster care system at 2. He has a severe mental health history going back through his biological family. He had a traumatic brain injury when he was abused in his birth home. He has developmental disabilities. He doesn't fit into any box neatly. He's the greatest love of my life. I more than any person I've ever known. He's changed me immeasurably. But the last 15 years have been extraordinarily difficult. He is, as I said, recently diagnosed with schizophrenia, has a number of other mental health challenges and disabilities. And as a parent, I have spent the last 15 years, my wife and I, also raising another child of our own, but we've been in crisis mode basically nonstop. I have been in emergency rooms and hospitals throughout the state over the last 15 years because there are not enough beds in the St. Louis area. My child has been transported 3 hours away, 4 hours away. I have had to leave my jobs at different points so that I can be with him in an emergency room setting. I would say that the video, while very, very helpful, underestimates the length of stay that many children throughout the state are in an emergency room setting waiting for a bed. Or sent home with no access to a bed. I understand that there are a lot of considerations in this project, but I have to appeal to what we look at as what do we want our overall community represent. I would ask that appeal to the best of our natures in caring for children and adolescents who are in severe, severe need. I can't even tell you what it's been like watching the system change over the last 15 years in terms of the amount of kids that are in crisis. It just keeps growing, and there are not enough places where they can be safely administered to and treated and helped along towards healing. Now that my son is 18, now I'm navigating the adult mental health system, which is just as much of a nightmare. So I would just simply ask that I give my full support to this project. My son won't be able to take advantage of it, but it's my hope that other children and adolescents throughout the St. Louis area and their families can be serviced, because we are simply exhausted and alone and desperately in need of services. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, Rebecca Paz. Okay, we got 3 minutes, and give us your address, please.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Paz. I live at 740 Landscape Avenue, and I'm a parent of a son who has very similar issues as the last gentleman. We were in the ER for 3 days, and I was losing my mind with him. And the problem is they're going to assess them every step of the way, but unless a child gets discharged, there's not a bed available. And so they kept bringing doctors down, and they knew that he needed these beds, but he wasn't able to get that. And at one point I had my brother come up. I'm a single mom, and I just really needed some support. And he knew another nurse at Mercy Hospital, and she said, I think there's a bed available. I mean, we were so desperate. We were like, okay, let's take him, but he was on a psych hold. So we really had no options but to wait it out. So finally, we were able to get a bed. And after sleeping 3 days on a cot, like I was in tears, I was crying to the nurses and just so grateful because this kind of care is just so needed in the area. He has gone on to be diagnosed early onset schizophrenia. He is my biological son. He was premature, low birth weight, and I think he's on the spectrum and he has struggled ever since. But this project would ensure that other kids could have care and wouldn't have to wait the amount of time that we had to wait and just really benefit the community. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Okay, Ann Mitchell.
Hi, I'm Ann Mitchell, also on Landscape Avenue. And I'm coming to talk to you from a kind of different perspective. So I'm a lifelong resident of Webster, and I'm also a parent of a former Webster student, and I'm also an educator, not in Webster, but in a neighboring district. And I can definitely see, just looking at it as an educator perspective, the need for, I teach fourth grade, and even the kids that we've had that have had suicidal ideations at that early age. We try to refer kids places, and again, it's just the wait. I think it's really needed. I was elated personally to see that this would be something that Webster would be represented as caring for children and their families. I think it's really needed. I know I was looking at some of the things on Facebook comments and seeing some of the concerns, traffic being one of them. But I mean, in Webster, there's always traffic, right? You're either stuck at the train, or it was Steger for me when I was doing drop off. Not as much of an issue now, or even stuck behind a golf cart. And so we're looking at the reasons of being stuck in traffic. To me, saving a child's life is worth an extra couple minutes of a commute. And then I know some people had some concerns over things that they may see. I know there was a comment about a mother who had to see somebody who's a resident had eloped, and some staff had to catch them, basically. And this is on a Facebook thing, which I get. That would, as I empathize with that as a mom, that would be traumatic for a kid to see. But I know when I was at Hickson, one of my friends shot himself, and I'm sure that those neighbors would much rather have seen him get tackled from the health and brought out in a body bag. So I support, this has got my full support. I think Webster is a very caring community, and this would just be another example of how we care for children. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you for the time to address you today. I appreciate all the information, very detailed. I appreciate the letter in the mail as a very nearby resident, and I'm going to be addressing a very different interpretation today. So having lived in our house directly next door, that since 2017, when we moved in, it was quite a different setting than it is now. When residents were there, we very frequently had residents on our property knocking on our door, trying to get in our house as we tried to rush our children inside and lock the door, banging on the door, throwing things off of our porch while they're being tackled in the front yard. So it was a very stressful situation for us, our family, our neighbors. And since before KVC became involved, when Great Circle removed their residential program, it was night and day. It's a completely different environment now. Since KVC moved in, there's no residents in there, but there's a constant police presence, fire rescue there all of the time. Constantly people running around all over the place. We're looking for our children, 6 and 8, to make sure that they're safe. And with a hospital, an institution, additional residents there, I'm very concerned for the safety of our kids, our family, our neighbors, and the community. So whether you live next to the facility or not, we're all going to have the burden of extra, as was addressed earlier in the presentation, extra costs for services. It's going to be a strain on the police. It's going to be a strain on the paramedics, fire that are there, will be there constantly. Yes, I understand that it is a new company that has gone in. We've heard in the presentation today that there are going to be fences that couldn't be climbed. That is a little worrisome to me, and I'm sure my neighbors as well. So I think it is important to hear the perspective of families who live adjacent to this proposal. So thank you. That's all.
Anyone else here in person?
I didn't fill out a card. Do I need to fill out a card? Okay.
Station name and address, please.
Janet Noble, 333 North Gore. Wait till you get to the-
Janet Noble, 333 North Gore. I live directly across the street, is that too loud? At 333 North Gore. And I often get the facilities mail. In addition to, I second the last gentleman that was up here. I've lived here over 30 years, and every company that has moved in there has said our facility is safe. We're going to take care of the children, blah, blah, blah. I'm a nurse. That's my profession. So I understand taking care of people when they're sick. However, there have been children escaping from the facility ever since I have lived here. Within the last 2 years or 3 years, there was a child that came running down the hill. I live on North Gore, so there's a big setback there. And I hope to God that we keep that setback because we're going to need it. Gore is very, very busy. We just talked about the Douglas Hill project a couple years ago, and that traffic with the railroad, the train coming by, the traffic backs up on Rock Hill Road. And then it even backs up by the stop sign by my street. And so if this is going to have a lot of traffic to bring emergency clinic cars and vehicles down there, that's going to be an issue. Also, parents line up and park on my street across from my driveway because they're trying to pick up their kids from the computer school, Steger School. There's no place for the parents to park there on Rock Hill Road when the kids get out of the school. So that's what they do. So parking is already a problem. I understand that they're going to have the next meeting August 5th. School doesn't start in Webster until later on in August. So I wish we could have that study include when there's school buses and everything else on Rock Hill Road and all through this area of Webster. I did see cameras. I guess that's what the cameras were up there doing a traffic study earlier, but that was in May. I didn't see any cameras up there in March. Anyway, let's get back to, there was a child that was running down the campus on, she crossed North Gore, 2 doors down from me. She tried to pull the screen door open. The screen door was locked. So what she did then is she jumped on top of the car that was in the driveway. She jumped up on the hood, then she jumped up on the roof and was jumping up and down. So I'm not saying that they're not going to secure the kids there, but let's acknowledge that some kids are going to get out and safety is a factor. Are they going to have security guards at all the doors? Can I go on or is that it? Pardon? Okay.
Okay, anyone else here in the room?
You've got two online. So I'm going to start with the first. There we go.
Hello,
Yes.
Yep.
can you hear me?
Yes, we
Yes,
can.
can.
Hi, this is Debbie Dinsbach. I live at 220 College Avenue. I have never seen a traffic study done on this street, College Avenue. We currently have a lot of volume on our street. It is a narrow street. I have witnessed several vehicles, parked vehicles, residential vehicles, sideswiped. I have seen the side view mirrors removed, and all from speeding vehicles from employees traveling up to KVC, previously Great Circle, previous to that, Edgewood, as well as school bus drivers. Most recently in February, I was behind a school bus that intentionally and very deliberately tried to navigate between two parked vehicles on our street and intentionally and deliberately sideswiped both vehicles, removed both of the side view mirrors. The police had to be called. The supervisor for that bus driver had to be called, and that bus driver continues to drive up and down this street. So I would like to know how you're going to address vehicles on the street. I understand it is a public street, but we do have a lot of concerns with regards to traffic. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we have another one. Mr. Shearer.
Yes, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm Mike Shear. I live at 424 Bacon Avenue, so I basically live across Rock Hill Road from the current facility. Please note that I absolutely agree with the first people that were talking in terms of the fact that there absolutely is a need for more mental health facilities for not only children, adults. We're going through a crisis related to that. I absolutely agree to that. However, I'm not so sure that a residential community is the best location for one of these facilities. I'm going to learn more about this, obviously, and I'm on the fence right now because it's absolutely needed. But again, I'm not so sure that a residential community is the best location for a facility like this. The traffic study that was done in March, I certainly hope it wasn't done during the week of spring break when school was not in session. And for now, that's all I had to say. I'm just not sure that this is the right area for a facility like that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Would the applicant like to respond?
Sorry,
Whoop.
one more.
One more? Oh,
Yeah.
sorry.
Hold on just a second. This one doesn't have, it just says iPhone, so they need to say their name and address.
Hello, my name is Kia Jackson and I am at 310 Euclid in Rock Hill, Missouri. I want to go ahead and just state, first of all, that I do sympathize with family members that have provided their personal testimonies. And I can attest that there is a need of such for these families, and to having traveled out great distances, being away from your child, even if they are admitted. So I do agree that there is a need there. However, I don't necessarily think that this area, being a residential area, a neighborhood, as close-knit as this is, it poses a great threat just to the community. And so from that standpoint, I'm just questioning how, who would actually be liable in the instance that something did take place with one of the residents if they were to escape. Given the example that was provided before, how the young lady escaped and she jumped on top of a vehicle, if damage had been incurred, who would be liable for that? Or would criminal charges have to be pursued?
Okay, thank you. Okay, any other latecomers?
So someone who already spoke has put their hand back up again, but at this point, each person is allowed their 3 minutes, so they could definitely speak at the next meeting.
Correct, yeah. Okay, would the applicant care to respond to any of the concerns or support stated?
I think we want to thank everybody for their honest comments, and we want to hear concerns and assure and reassure neighbors and community members our commitment to safety. So far on the KVC Kansas campus, that is no longer Great Circle and no longer a part of that history. We want to share that this December, we placed delayed egress doors on the school building. I think somebody spoke about having a history of an event here. We've had 0 elopements since that time. And I also want to share that the building that we're proposing here, the one that we're talking about, that's a hospital, is a very different level license of security than what has ever existed on that campus. And that level of security has provided levels of safety that wasn't previously established under our predecessor's care and treatment model. And specifically, I said it before, I want to make sure I reiterate it because I want folks to understand we hear your concerns and we want to meet them and are happy to talk through them. But we have had 1 police call in 3 facilities that cover a few hundred beds and did over 4,800 admissions for the same children in the last year. When you are in these environments that allow for the safety features these environments allow for, which is different than a dormitory style educational setting, which was what was previous, it allows for safety features that the community has not experienced before. And we are committed to that level of quality and safety in this Webster Grove community, as we have served the communities that we do in other locations. I'd also remind everybody, we did share that there is security staff members that will be on campus 24/7, 365. Unlike previous, and 160 cameras, interior and exterior monitoring, over 160. So don't quote me on the exact number. It might be like 168, but it's real close to that. But over 160 cameras inside of this facility to make sure that our interiors and our exteriors are keeping patient, staff, and community safety in mind.
Thank you, Kim. The last thing I would offer is St. Louis Children's Hospital, understanding that we, as part of BJC, needed to be part of the solution to this mental health crisis. We're very intentional about choosing who to partner with. And the reason we decided to partner with KVC was because of their history around safety and security. They are bringing their experience, we're bringing our experience running a hospital, and we believe this is the best go-forward plan, and it will result in increased safety for this community.
I believe you touched on this. Brian asked this question. The challenges that your kids face different than the challenges faced by Great Circle.
So I'll share. By the time KVC Missouri acquired the property, we didn't have full access to review all of those records. It would be remiss of us to compare patients. I would say that we are dealing with children with behavioral and mental health crisis in a much more secure environment than those previous children. So it's a bit harder to say because they were done in a dormitory school-based setting, that is not the intent of these children. They're not intended to be here for school. They're intended to be with us for a mental health crisis in a secured environment.
Just to offer one point of clarity. I know there was a little bit of ambiguity about the answer on the date of the traffic, just so that there's no misunderstanding across the board here. So just re-reviewed the draft. So the date of the field study was completed on Wednesday, April 24th at both the AM and the PM peak hours throughout that day. So it would not have fallen on a spring break timeframe. It would have accounted for kind of a typical middle of the week period of time. So just to clarify, since there was a little bit of an unclear answer on my part.
Thanks. And do we expect CBB to be here next meeting or just have their We'll just have access to the report.
They had offered to make themselves available, so we can. Obviously, this is an important issue, so we can make them available if need be.
Okay, anything else?
I asked the same question, perhaps much better than I did, but same question I intended. Yeah, I tried to get a handle on what's different. And so these comments about, somebody said the police and the paramedics are gonna have their hands full, if I'm paraphrasing that correctly. So, you know, a lot of stuff, the utilities, the easements, the traffic studies, I'm very comfortable. I can probably do as well or better than most people. But that kind of issue, I guess I'm asking if the police and the fire department, I thought you said they kind of looked at this. Do they have opinions on that topic, and could they provide some input perhaps?
So if you look in the staff report at the bottom, there are comments from the police department as well as comments from the fire department. So they had some questions about overall, is there going to be on-site security? They had some questions about cameras, and some of those other questions were related to total number of, it's probably the last page right before you get to recommendations.
I saw the fire department, and I thought that was more and specific to like getting there if there's a fire versus the paramedics.
So in the previous Edgewood
And it
and
just says they were distributed, but I really nothing specific to what they said about it. They got it.
there should be a couple sentences about the police.
Security staffing. It just says, please have questions.
Right, because there wasn't anything specific in the application about security. There were some questions about staffing. There was not much in there about the cameras and the other things that they've started to talk to us about. So those were their questions. And normally when we have a hearing that's held open to 2 meetings, this provides those questions all in one place to the applicants, so they can provide us additional information for any of those items prior to the next staff report going out before the next plan commission meeting.
So the next meeting, that should kind of be, we should have the police.
Additional information. The police department already asked their questions, so those questions have been passed on. And those are the questions that are in the report.
Can I ask 2 questions? You said we didn't have information about why the requested setback was at 40 instead of 70?
We could ask them specifically. I mean, obviously they were working off of the campus master plan of previous setbacks. And on the campus master plan, the previous setback was only 40 feet. And that was based on, again, the previous development. And when I was reviewing the conditional use permit setbacks, it is a little bit different because on the campus master plan, you can ask for whatever setbacks that you want. And at the time, that is what the applicants 10 years ago asked for. So in this case, I had suggested that potentially matching the CUP would meet a little bit more of the ordinances that are already in place for institutions.
Okay, so it wasn't necessarily an intentional request.
They could state better if there was anything specific, but it did match the 40 that was already in the campus master plan.
Sure. Okay. And then my other question is the facility, being a hospital, equipped to handle the needs of the patients that are there without having to transfer them to other hospitals under emergencies? Or are there frequent occurrences where you would need to transfer patients from this facility to a different hospital? I guess, to be very blunt and specific, if someone were successful in trying to attempt to commit suicide and they were hurt, is that something that this hospital can treat, or do they need to be taken to a different facility?
So it would depend on the medical needs of the patient. Every child coming in has to be medically stabilized. This is not a med surge hospital. It is intended to be inpatient behavioral health. And so, but we do have trained nurses and pediatricians and physicians on staff. So it would depend on the severity. So if you had diabetes and your diabetes shot up, this hospital is not necessarily intended to treat uncontrolled blood sugar. But it, in those cases, would require a transfer. We very rarely, in our current 3 hospitals that we run, transfer patients. When that happens, often it's because they were playing basketball and they need an x-ray, and we don't have that kind of laboratory equipment there, but it is minor. And we do have secure transportation, like secure cars, that we provide our own transportation, so long as it's something like I just shared, and not a medical emergency, which are pretty rare.
Okay.
Those transfers.
Thanks. That helps to answer questions about the utilization of the fire and
Yes, and so
police department.
4,800, I just know I keep saying it, but I do want to just share, we've had 1 emergency call in 3 hospitals out of 4,800 admissions in the last year.
Okay, so that would even include transfers of care. Most of them you can handle on your own.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. It's been a while since we did one. Do we need to affirmatively keep the hearing open?
I would say go ahead and take a vote. Yes.
Motion to continue public hearing for 24 PC06 until our next meeting in August.
Second.
All right, moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay,
So just a clarification for those that are online that are now raising hands again. There will be an opportunity to speak at the next meeting. In addition, if anyone would like to provide written comments that they would like included in the packets, please send them to City Hall and we would be able to include them in the packets.
okay, next item.
24. An application by Peace United Church of Christ for a conditional use permit to allow a place of worship use in the existing structures, 483 East Lockwood Avenue, located on a 16.23 acre tract of land at 47 North Bompard Avenue in the EC1 Educational Campus District.
So you have before you this evening a conditional use permit for an existing piece of property at 47 North Bompard Avenue. This is for Peace United Church of Christ. The current zoning of this particular piece of property is the EC1 Educational Campus District. You can see on the map around the surrounding property to the north and to the east. You have primarily the A1 20,000, or sorry, north and west, you have the A1 20,000 square foot residence district. To the east, it is A3 and A4 single family residence. And to the south, there's kind of a mix of both B multifamily, EC1, EC2, and A1 20,000 square foot residence district. For those that will note, the red outline is the area of the property that is Eden Seminary versus the portion that was split off for Webster University, which includes Lure Library and their other 2 properties. The existing conditions of the site, the property has on the overall campus, has a series of existing parking lots and a series of existing structures. The campus of the seminary has over time included multiple uses, including leasing to some small offices and office spaces, as well as having some dormitories for their students of the seminary. You can see in the map here, there are a couple parking lots that are identified in more of an orange color. Those parking lots are actually part of the Webster University piece of property in terms of their parking. The history of this property is pretty extensive. In 1924, Eden Theological Seminary moved to Webster Groves. From 1966 through 2006, there were 5 CUPs for uses or additional construction on the campus. In 2000, Ordinance 8152 created a master plan for the seminary with additional amendments to the plan in 2002 and then again in 2012. In 2013, there was a plat that established to separate the part of the campus that was being sold to Webster University. And in 2014, similar to the last application that we saw, there was a rezoning to the EC1 Educational Campus Zoning District. In 2015, there was a subdivision plat approved, and this outlined red piece of property was split into 2 parcels. The comprehensive plan analysis always looks at, again, what the existing zoning is. When you do a conditional use permit, we're not changing the zoning. We're using the existing zoning. However, we do always sort of look at this comprehensive plan analysis just to verify the overall uses. So it's recommended in the 2017 comprehensive plan map that this be public, institutional, or community uses. For a conditional use permit, we look at and determine whether the proposed use will substantially increase traffic hazards or congestion, substantially increase fire hazards, adversely affect the character of the neighborhood, adversely affect the general welfare of the community, or overtax public utilities. The use that is being proposed is Peace United Church of Christ, which had a piece of property on Lockwood, has moved out of their Lockwood facility and have moved into to share the facilities at Eden Seminary. So the proposal that they have is using essentially 3 different structures. The Press Education Center, which the chapel is in that particular building. It's highlighted with a little bit of a blue that you can see behind the building labeled A. Schultz Hall, which has staff offices, meetings, rooms, and places for music rehearsals, some storage in Schultz Hall, and Schultz Hall is highlighted in pink. And then Shore Commons, which will also have the ability for them to use some of those spaces, which you can see highlighted in green. The yellow is highlighting all the existing parking that's on the campus, but essentially they are using these facilities. When they use those facilities, they obviously can't be used for the seminary at the same time. So some of the larger spaces like where they will have worship services can only be used by them and would not be used by the seminary at the same time. We look at the overall parking related to this particular use. The zoning code requires a minimum of 1 parking space for every 5 seats to be located on site or within 200 feet of the property. The existing campus has 270 parking spaces. The overall number of seats that they are using when they have worship services is 90. So 1 parking space for every 5 seats means they technically only required to have 18 parking spaces. They did note in their letter that they typically use more parking spaces than that. But because of the fact that there's 270 parking spaces on the campus used so their peak time would be during Sunday services, and that overlap between those and not being able to use that for any other larger gatherings in that particular location or that particular building. This would separate itself from the parking that's being able to be used for Lure Library and for Webster University. This is just the parking spaces that are part of Eden Seminary. Dimensional regulations, there's no proposal being made to make any changes to the exterior of any of the structures. So staff do not recommend placing any additional dimensional regulations that aren't already in the educational campus district regulations. And before I get to recommendation, any questions?
Just one question about the parking. Is there going to be an internal parking agreement? Or they're just saying they're here? Like if they were to have an event, and use up their 18 parking spaces, is there going to be a separate parking agreement?
We hadn't thought about having a separate parking agreement. Most often we don't get into the lease agreement with some of these things, especially if they're using a facility that was already used for that same manner or use. But it is something that you could consider if you thought that it was important to put it into the ordinance.
Specifically, we can't require somebody to enter into a private agreement. We can, however, require that they secure additional parking, and that could be something that we require they bring to us or be in compliance with in the future.
Any other questions? I'll briefly go. So through the conditional use permit, again, all provisions of the city code shall apply except as expressly modified in the CUP ordinance. The approved use shall be a place of worship use. The EC1 Educational Campus District dimensional regulations shall apply to all uses. And the conditional use permit is personal to the applicant and shall not run with the land. So should this particular church end up moving to another location and another church come in, a new CUP would be required to be obtained if they were going to lease out to another user.
Would the applicant care to address the commission? We have Jeff Davis and Jen Einspar.
I'm Reverend Jen Einspar, Associate Pastor at Peace. Mara covered pretty much everything, I think. Is now the time that I would answer the question or? Okay.
Yeah.
So we have seating for 90 on a Sunday morning. We don't have that many people. And Eden and Peace work together if there's going to be an event on campus. They're not going to do an event at the same time we are. So there's no chance really of filling all parking spaces.
What she said.
Okay. Okay, any questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you. Public comments. Maggie Sowash here. All right, please step on up.
I'm Maggie Sowash. I live at 26 Joy Avenue. So we back up to Eden Seminary and we face Holy Redeemer. I'm not familiar with this particular church. And Mara went through everything so fast, so I might be asking some of the same questions over. What is the church's mission? Are they a traditional Christian church? Or what kind of worship do they do? I'm just not familiar with what you do. So that's one of my questions. Also, it looks on that map that there's a whole lot of property they want to take over at Eden. But the woman who just talked said they have a membership of 90, but not that many people show up. So how much property do they need over there? Which also translates to traffic.
If you keep asking the questions, then we can come back and answer them.
Yes, okay, good. Hours of operation, is it Sundays only? Do they offer any other kind of church-related practices? I mean, are they providing therapy to certain groups of people? I mean, who all is going to go over there would be my question. But I also have another question which relates to Eden Seminary. Yeah, I went through this 10 years ago when Webster University wanted to move over to Eden Seminary, and a group of us opposed that. And that's when these educational things, I think, started popping up. Is Eden wanting to rent to this church, or are they selling to this church? What is Eden doing with that property? They seem to be piecing it out to Webster University and now to the Peace Church, and what's next? I mean, is Eden dying a death by 1,000 cuts? What's going on with Eden? Those are all things that kind of concern me as someone who backs up to that property. So if anybody can answer any of those today or whenever, it'd be good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else here care to comment?
I can start by answering a couple of the questions and then the applicant can also. So this is just leasing space in the existing buildings. So they are, the educational campus zoning allows them to lease up to a certain percentage of their space. That was put in when we did the educational campus to keep them from just renting everything out on the campus. We typically don't put hours of operation in for places of worship, but we always can if we feel that there's a particular need. In most cases, churches have services on standard weekends, but then even when they have them on other days, normally most of the facilities are overparked to handle the larger amount on, say, a Sunday a day of worship versus other days where they might be using other parts of the facility. I'll let the applicant speak a little bit more about their type of church and their location.
Okay, so we are part of the United Church of Christ, which is a fairly major denomination in the United States. Well, I consider it a traditional church service. A pastor gets up, preaches. We have music, joys and concerns, children's time, all that kind of things, and services at 10 a.m. So if anybody would really like to see our service, you're welcome to join us. I'll put in a little plug. So yeah, services are at 10 a.m., but we usually have staff there Monday through Thursday from 8 in the morning until maybe 4 or 5 o'clock. It kind of depends upon how we feel. And then we also have a music program through the church. So there's evenings where we have hand chimes, choirs, and that type of thing that are rehearsing. I don't know that there was.
I think
I think you covered those questions, and we're just leasing the property or, space from Eden. And the thing is, Peace and Eden have had a long relationship, a very long relationship. Peace was saving money to build their building, expand it. Eden Seminary needed money. We gave them money. That's been a long time ago. Eden is a United Church of Christ seminary, where Peace is a United Church of Christ church. So we housed their Eden Lab School, it was called, for years, where many of the young people from, okay, you had kids probably that went there, okay? Yeah, so it was, we've been having quite the relationship, and it just made sense for us to be housed on Eden's campus.
I'm sorry, ma'am.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to step away from you.
I just, based on the last comment from the applicant, I thought I knew, but I want to make sure I know what I thought I knew.
Okay.
You're currently right here off Lockwood.
So we own 204 and 212 East Lockwood.
East Lockwood.
So, but we have moved to the Eden campus. But when we moved, we didn't realize that we needed this CUP.
Correct.
So that's why we're a little late in applying.
But you've been in Webster half a mile from where you're.
Over 100 years.
Forever and ever.
Right? It was our 100th anniversary. Yes. So,
same
yes,
thing.
I have not been here that long, but the church has been, so.
That's what I thought.
In various names, it has been, the denomination has changed. Yes.
Just add one thing. I think the fact that we've been in Eden, I mean, we're in the process, we will eventually sell the property at Plant and Lockwood. And we made the decision, our church was not going to need that big of a facility, and it seemed earlier a smart move. More of our resources then can go into our work with the community versus maintaining a building. The evidence of what would really happen with us being inside Eden is already taken place, because if you go on a Sunday, which is our biggest time for people coming to Eden for our church, the parking lot is not, it's probably a fifth full or something like that. So we're not taking up much parking space. And when we moved our offices into Eden, we were really kind of taking space that needed to be taken anyway. So in a way, it's been pretty much a win-win for both organizations.
Quick question, how long have you been at Eden? I understand you're kind of backtracking to CUP, and that is what it is.
So just over a year, we moved, I believe it was in February. Our boiler went down and we had to find a new place to worship quickly. Offices, we could still work out of one part of the building that had a different type of heat. So we did that. And we had to renovate our office space at Eden before we could move in. So it took us a little bit, but
So really no change then to what exists now? because
no, it's been happening for just over a year now. So yeah. Mhm.
Just a quick question. This is for Mara, and the district that it's in, and they were supposed to lease out a certain percentage. What is that percent? I mean, I don't even think they're close to that.
They're nowhere close to that. They're allowed to lease out. I can grab the code if I need to look it up, but I want to say it's 25%.
Well, I know you've done your homework, so I'm assuming that they're. all
Yes,
good, but-
they are definitely under the overall amount of square footage that has been leased out for various uses is way under
Okay.
the allowed amount.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Yeah, no one on.
No one online has raised hand.
Okay, thank you. Next item.
Yes, if you want to close the public hearing and everyone can stay and listen to the
Okay.
executive session once we get past the plat.
Motion, second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Next item, 24 PC08 Orchard Knolls lots 12 through 15 re-subdivision plat. A petition by Vance Engineering on behalf of Pentrex Development Corporation. Property owner of 439 Landscape Court for an application for a re-subdivision to be known as Orchard Knolls Lot 12 through 15 re-subdivision plat. The subject properties encompass approximately 0.91 acres of land. The subject properties are located within the A4 7,500 square foot residence district.
So you have before you this evening a re-subdivision plat. The overall subdivision of Orchard Knolls was established in 1972. It is zoned A4 7,500 square foot residence district. You can see in this map here, the red outlined is the one lot that is established, is proposed to be subdivided and changed slightly from the current configuration that was approved with the subdivision in 1972. The zoning around it for all the other residential properties is also A4 7,500 square foot residence district. To the west is Blackburn Park. The history of this property, the subdivision came in 1972. At that time, the city did not have a planning director, but had a consultant that would review plans and discuss feedback that would then be provided to the Plan Commission at that time. Harlan Bartholomew and Associates was the outside firm who reviewed the submittal. They made some comments related to the plat, and the plat changed a couple different ways in terms of the configuration of how the lots were established. In particular, there was at least one lot that didn't meet the minimum requirements, so they made some changes over time. The plat was approved by the City Council on April 18th, 1972 via Ordinance 6831. What is being proposed is that the property did have lots 12, 13, 14, and 15. 12 was located to the south of an existing house that had been built in the end of the turn of the century. That particular house had a much larger lot established as part of that subdivision plat. So if you look back at the subdivision plat, you'll see one lot that's quite a bit larger than the rest of the lots. All the other lots were established to meet the minimum requirements, and that lot was established to keep the existing house. That house has remained on what is almost a double-sized lot. And then there were two lots to the north of it that had been established as part of the plat. Because this plat was done in 1972, that means that our code does not automatically merge them all into one single lot, which is what happens a lot of times. So there is currently a lot 12 that has not been developed, a lot 13 with an existing house, and 14 and 15, which are also two other established lots. The applicant is proposing, let me also say the existing house did already go through Historic Preservation Commission for the request to be able to be demolished. And they were given that approval to move forward with that. The applicant is proposing to split the lot that the existing house had been on, which is lot 13, but they are also wanting to move a couple of the lot lines from some of the other existing lots. So lot splits typically go straight to city council, and boundary adjustments are normally administratively approved. But because they were trying to move multiple lot lines as well as split the lot to a subdivision plat that had been approved in the 70s with some established regulations, staff felt it was important to come back through Plan Commission and then go to City Council for the final approval. The way that the code works is if they meet everything in the regulations, it is something that the Plan Commission would approve. So they are meeting all of the A4 regulations. They are needing no additional special considerations for anything that's within the code. They will meet the minimum lot size, the minimum width of lot at the buildable, at the building line, as well as the average width of lot. They will be taking a couple easements and having to vacate those because the furthest lot to the north does have a couple odd easements for utilities that do not go through that area. And when it goes to the city council, it will have an ordinance that will say that all future development at the subject properties shall meet the existing municipal code requirements. The establishment of the plat precludes current and future owners from obtaining variances from the code at the subject properties because they are establishing these lot sizes and lot lines and the configuration under today's codes. And I'm available for any questions. It is not a public hearing. However, the engineer is here should you have any questions about the plat or any other considerations.
I feel like we should have some.
Good evening. My name is Clay Vance with Vance Engineering. Mara did a great job. I really don't have anything to add. We have submitted it in anticipation of approval. We have submitted it to MSD. The 4 lots that are there all had Ys installed already when the subdivision was built. So those lots, they would have to add 1 for the new lot that would be added. So, and the reason for adjusting the lot lines is to make all of the rectangular lots 63 feet wide roughly to make them all the same.
Is it 25 yard that there's rear setback? Is that's in the code?
For A4?
For A4, okay.
Yes.
I didn't know it was Clay that a 5-yard setback, 5-foot side yard setback on the north side.
6-foot side yard.
Pardon me?
6-foot side yard setback in the A4.
But there's also.
There's a
is
5-foot
that a
easement.
10-foot easement.
There's a 5-foot easement. Am I correct? Or is that, oh, sorry, that 10-foot easement is being
Off the back.
on the north lot.
Runs along the west.
North side.
There's a 10-foot easement on the north
10-foot
side.
easement.
Mm-hmm.
So that very north setback in essence becomes 10.
It's gonna be 10,
with the
right,
easement.
right.
And that won't, and then the other 2, the water and the clean gas are gonna be vacated.
Correct.
And there's
And
no improvements in
I'm
those.
not sure, we are in the process of checking that because the prior plat indicated that those would be vacated and I don't really know if they have been. So we've reached out to the utilities to try to figure out whether that's happened or whether we have to do it.
I don't know if this is how this fits into approvability, but I did have a question about the tree preservation because it looks like there are quite a few mature trees on this lot. And how does that play into, like, where does that get reviewed in the process?
So after this plat gets approved, they will come in for architecture review board review for each of the houses, and tree preservation at that time will be reviewed. It will come in for the Parks Department and each lot will be reviewed on its own. And they'll review if trees are being removed, there's a combination of they have to plant a certain amount back, and then any additional caliper inches that they can't plant back, they will then pay into the tree fund. And those will be for trees put in other public places and parks. And so they will get reviewed when they come in for architecture review board.
Yeah, I'm just, when you look at the,
This is just a plat review.
this is a plat review.
Yeah.
No, I got it. You look at here, like, you can tell from the, it's easier to tell in the picture from the drawing that there's some good trees there.
Yeah. And they will look at that, and then Yvonne will review with them the regulations and what trees can be saved.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, well, we already closed the public hearing. We adjourn the regular session.
Make a motion to adjourn regular session.
Second. Favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Okay, next item.
Okay, executive session, 24 PC07 Peace United Church of Christ, 47 North Bompard Avenue. An application by Peace United Church of Christ for a conditional use permit to allow a place of worship in the existing structures, 483 East Lockwood Avenue, located on a 16.23 acre tract of land at 47 North Bompard Avenue in the EC1 Educational Campus District. I don't have anything to say.
Any discussion, comments?
I'm very happy that you're staying in Webster. 'Cause, you know,
Make a motion to approve. Staff recommendations.
Second.
What do we need to do to what do you call
The factors?
factors before we approve?
Do we have
Yeah.
to? Wow.
Fact-
Yeah, we
with the
do.
fact-
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Strike
All
that
right.
from the record.
All right. We will hold, we'll hold that. All right. I mean, yeah, to me, I mean, this is, I mean, it's been there. It's not an increase in usage, but, all right. Substantially increased traffic hazards or congestion.
No,
No.
Substantially increased fire hazards,
no,
No.
adversely affect the character of the neighborhood.
no,
No.
No.
Adversely affect general welfare of the community
no,
No.
and overtax public utilities.
no.
No.
Okay.
It's an
Motion.
established partnership.
Yeah. I think it's good. Okay.
Now I can make a motion
All right.
to approve staff recommendations and forward to the city council.
Moved and seconded again. Thank you, Mike, for that alert. All those in, so we will do roll call here. So let's just go. Grace?
Aye.
Annie?
Yes.
Steve?
yes.
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Annie?
Yes.
And Chair says yes. Thank you. All right.
24 PC08 Orchard Knolls lots 12 through 15 re-subdivision plat. A petition by Vance Engineering on behalf of Pentrex Development Corporation, property owner at 439 Landscape Court, for an application for a re-subdivision to be known as Orchard Knolls lots 12 through 15 re-subdivision plat. The subject properties encompass approximately 0.91 acres of land. The subject properties are located within the A4 7,500 square foot residence district.
Okay. No factors here. Any comment? Seems to be kind of de minimis. Best.
Do we even have to make a motion to approve this one?
You do.
Okay, motion to approve.
Now you're just hogging it.
Second.
All right. Moved and seconded. We'll go roll call again. Start at this end. Manny?
Aye.
Mike?
Yes.
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
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 Yes. Okay, push passes. Thank you.
Okay. Other business? Say goodbye to our fearless leader.
Yeah.
Wish you good luck.
Thanks.
Sorry.
Do we have the opportunity to ask any questions about, I know we're not doing executive session for the first package, but I have a couple questions.
I'd say, yep, go ahead.
Were the neighbors in Rock Hill notified with the
Yeah.
same letter? Okay.
I
I didn't
did.
think I needed to ask that to the applicant, but
No, you're fine. I did so normally our code is 185 feet from the property line. We went ahead and did 300 feet just to get a little bit more of a buffer. And we have the ability now to get all the mailing addresses for other communities at the same time. So it did go to both Rock Hill and Webster.
Okay, actually, that was my only question, so.
Oh, well, that was an easy question. No, if anyone else has any other questions that you need for here, great.
Someone will be in touch next month.
We'll get packets at some point, I guess.
Not as far as you.
Before, no, I don't leave until the 7th.
So August 5th was the date, and we did not specifically, if we need to figure out another date, we would need to do it as soon as possible so that we can find it doesn't have to be re-advertised because it's just the continuation of the next meeting. However, if we do end up not having a quorum, that would be important. We would need to address that.
Yeah,
And I won't be.
I'll be here.
But Tony.
So we're just missing 2, but potentially we'll have 3, but we will have hopefully Kyle and Christopher back in town. Attorney will be on Zoom.
what's the date you're looking at?
It's the first Monday of the month.
First Monday. I may be out. I'll have to check.
Okay.
But who will I email?
I'll get that addressed. I'll get that addressed before Wednesday.
Yeah.
Okay.
Get that done before
I'll get that addressed before Wednesday. I'll make sure we try to confirm that so that we can get that addressed, because right now the only item on is the continuation of the hearing. There are no new CUPs or anything else that has come in. So it's the only item on.
I assume they want to get that moving forward, so.
Yes. If you all are comfortable voting on it, yes.
Okay, I could log in through Zoom. I will not physically be here, but.
And if people are able to log in through Zoom, that still gives us the ability to then also meet the quorum. Okay.
Okay.
I'll put that on my to-do list of a couple things.
Thanks, Laura.
So I don't know, we did the letters after. Hi, by the way. We had the great boards and commissions update over at Webster University. That a couple months ago now, and followed up with that with letters to all of the boards and commissions, like we approved your budget, we approved your plan, that kind of thing. Did you share get those letters back? Get a letter back?
I did not forward those on yet. They were still on my to-do. Yeah.
That would be making its way. And the only thing that I think wanted to highlight council is this is a staff house. We understand it's not the current situation, but council would like the plan commission to kind of put on the agenda in the future to look at ADUs and occupancy permits as staff time allows. So just getting that on the radar, but we understand that's not a today thing.
I'm looking forward to it.
That's all. That's all.
And I know this, you're in an odd spot here. Are any current information on the master plan?
Oh, on the comprehensive plan?
Comprehensive.
Yes, so there is new information that came out. The summary of their last visit is now available on the website. So they have a full summary report of everything they heard at all of the meetings, at the public meeting, all of the listening sessions, all of that is pulled together and it is available on their website. It did go out in the Friday page last Friday. So anyone who gets the Friday page or is on the mailing, it should have, I thought, had a link in it. And if it didn't, it is available now. And we'll make sure to get that out. We did do some additional pop-ups. So for some of you that saw me at Webster Arts Fair, asking everyone who walked past me if they lived in Webster and handing out buttons and cards with a QR code. So we did do that, and we will potentially have to see about other people who can attend some of these pop-ups throughout the year. Their next scheduled time would be once school gets back in session around the same weekend as one of the Gazebo Series concerts. So they'd be here for one of the concerts as well as be here once school starts to get back in with some events potentially through the school district.
All right.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Thank you, Mara. Thank you and good luck.